Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining us. Today, we've got a brand new story to share with you. So let's begin. I would like to start by saying how much I truly love my wife. We have been together for 5 years and married for 4 years. I met her about a year before we started dating. I moved to a new city for work, and I was eventually her manager. It was a huge HR disaster, I know, but everything was strictly professional that first year. I will admit I was attracted to her, not strictly, just physically. She was full of energy and really great at her job, and I always admired her. I was in a relationship with another woman, though, and she was dating another man. My wife's relationship ended in the summer of 2019, and mine had been on the rocks for a long time. The woman I was dating was continuously having inappropriate text conversations with other men, and I was working 70 to 80-hour weeks to help provide financial stability. Honestly, looking back, I should have ended it much sooner. I think that I knew we were not compatible. Even with my relationship issues, I was still not looking to pursue my wife, and I had no intention of cheating on my then-girlfriend. In the late summer of 2019, there was a work trip that I was invited to go on for training. My wife was also on that trip. After the first day of training, the whole team met up at some bars, and my boss bought several rounds for everyone. Everyone got very drunk, and I blacked out a bit. During the later parts of that night, I helped walk some of the women from our group back to the hotel to ensure they made it back safely. My wife and I ended up having sex that night. The next morning, I was a wreck, but not because I cheated on my girlfriend. I was unsure how my wife felt, and I was nauseous, thinking I may have taken advantage of her. We talked that morning, and she told me she had been attracted to me since we met and that our interests had been mutual. We began talking nonstop, and I was traveling 3 hours away to visit her on a weekly basis. If I had a bad or hard day, she was the person that I wanted to see to make me feel better. The chemistry between us was something I had never felt in my life. She was intoxicating and wonderful. She saw the true me, and even to this day, she has never made me feel bad for being myself. I felt guilty sneaking around on my then-girlfriend, but more so, I felt awful that my wife was essentially my side piece. I decided to break up with my girlfriend, and the day I mustered up the nerve to do it, my girlfriend told me she was pregnant. I didn't break up with her that day, but shortly afterwards I did. This was one of the lowest points in my life, and I felt so disgusted with how I handled both situations. My wife deserved better from me and my girlfriend, and we should not have been together for nearly as long as we were. If I could go back to 2017 to 2018, I would do things much differently. After I broke up with my girlfriend, I almost immediately moved out and moved in with my wife. Everything moved very quickly, but it never felt like it. Everything genuinely felt right. I came clean to my ex-girlfriend about cheating on her, and she dragged me through the mud very publicly. She attacked my wife and turned some of my family against her as well. During this time, I was still processing the cheating and gaslighting my ex had done for nearly the entirety of our relationship, trying to build a new relationship with my wife, and also accepting accountability for my actions leading up to me getting together with my wife. I was also still working 60 to 80 hours a week, preparing for and eventually caring for a newborn, and COVID hit shortly after my son was born. All that stress piled up, and I tried so very hard to keep my composure and carry the weight of it all myself. I wanted to protect my wife from any extra burden. Looking back, this was a mistake. I understand now that it's not for me to decide what she can and can't handle. However, carrying all that burden caused me to put up emotional walls and made my wife feel isolated. I never wanted that, and any time she would address it with me, I got irritated and visibly frustrated. I guess because how could she not see all the burdens I'm carrying for her? In my mind, I wouldn't be doing that for someone I didn't love, respect, and admire. That wasn't what she needed from me, though. She was strong enough to carry those burdens with me. She needed me to tell her that I loved her and that everything would be okay. We would get through it together as a team. We went back and forth on the type of support she needed versus what I was giving. I genuinely tried to improve and meet her in the middle. I know she never felt fully satisfied, though. She made attempts to move towards the middle and did a lot of growing towards what I needed. She has always been more emotionally intelligent than me. Eventually she got pregnant, and she was so excited and happy to be a mom. She was devastated by how her body changed. She went from being very slim and petite to more average-sized. I still thought she was beautiful, sexy, and desirable. She didn't feel that way, and I didn't do nearly enough to reassure her. It was tough on her, and she would continually tell me how she felt fat and disgusted. Looking back, I should have made more of an effort to tell her how attracted I was to her. Despite all the issues that I'm describing, I want to point out that our relationship has always been very solid. We had our bumps like anyone else, but I've never been more devoted to someone. Any argument we've had was never me versus her and has always been us versus the issue. We've both grown and helped each other grow. Given faith, support, and grace to each other. I have no doubt in my mind that she is truly my soulmate. Every single hardship I've ever endured was a price I paid to meet her, and I would do them all over in a heartbeat. I love this woman with every fiber of my being. I was still battling my own silent battles in my head. I'm still dealing with the stress of all the things that happened around the breakup of my ex and my moving in with my wife. I was suppressing those feelings and avoiding them, and that took all the mental energy that I had. If only I had just let my wife in and let her help me, I think our relationship would have been even better than it already has been. A little over a month ago, though, I began to notice a shift in my wife's behavior. She was talking to me less, messaging me less, and always seemed distracted. She would also roll away from my side of the bed while we slept, which was unusual. There were a ton of small things that triggered the feeling I used to get when my ex was being sneaky behind my back. I confronted my wife and asked her if we were still good. She took a while to respond, but she told me that she had developed feelings for someone else. This was the most devastating thing I'd ever heard. I felt like a knife had been plunged into my stomach and ripped upward through my heart. She explained that nothing physical had happened and that it was inappropriate, but he made her feel validated and had told her how beautiful she was. She told me that it felt good, and she had been missing that feeling for a long time. They were all the things that she had been essentially begging me for during our marriage. Hearing those words hurt so much. It was like all the walls I had built had shattered. In that moment, I started truly feeling all the pain and guilt that I had bottled up for so many years. It all hit me like a freight train. I told her that I understood and that I wasn't mad at her for it. I thanked her for being honest with me, and I just asked for her to keep being honest and upfront with me. I told her that I was going to be better and that I could give her those things. She seemed skeptical and annoyed that, all of a sudden, I was willing and able to do that. I didn't know then, but the reason I was able to now was because the floodgates had been opened. It felt awful, but it gave me the mental capacity I needed to truly be the husband that she deserved. The next day, she was invited out to some bars by some of our mutual friends. These plans had been made well before our talk the night before, and I was going to stay home to watch the kids. I was in such an awful and emotional place that I just laid on the couch, upset and crying. She seemed impatient and almost annoyed by it. She pretended to try and comfort me, but I could tell she was ready to leave, so I told her it was okay. I asked if she would be out late, and she said she planned on being home by midnight. I left her alone, but when 12:30 a.m. came around and I hadn't heard anything, I messaged to see if she was okay. She said she was and that she was having fun. So I told her that's great and I went to sleep. I assumed it wouldn't be much longer before she got home. I woke up at 2:30 a.m. and she still wasn't there. I texted and called her a bunch of times before she finally answered. She sounded angry and annoyed. I told her I was just concerned. She never stayed out that late and always gave heads up on what she was doing, etc. She was just behaving out of character. She apologized and said she got caught up chatting and smoking cigarettes with her friends, and it just felt good after us having a fight the night before. She eventually came home around 3:20 a.m. We didn't talk much more about it afterwards and went to bed. Over the next few weeks, I made good on my promise to improve and be the husband she needed. I gave her validation and compliments every day. I cleaned the house, took care of all the chores, and took on the responsibilities of the kids. I really tried to go above and beyond to show her how much I appreciated and loved her. At first, she was still angry and annoyed about it. I think in her mind, I could have been doing all this the whole time and had just chosen not to. Which is not the case, but I can understand why she would feel that way. We had several conversations where she said she was unsure about our future. She didn't want to leave, but she wasn't over the feelings she had for the other guy. Outwardly, I tried to be compassionate and understanding because I felt responsibility for her getting to a point where she needed to search for emotional connection outside our marriage. Inside, it destroyed me. I felt so full of shame and guilt for not being good enough or deserving of her love, while also feeling hurt and betrayed. After several weeks, things genuinely started to get better. She was being more like her normal self and we had less and less arguments. Still, there were nagging feelings I had that she was still hiding something. She was always on her phone more than usual. taking an interest in things that she hadn't before. So I asked her what the status of her relationship with that guy was. She told me that she had ended it and told him that they needed to communicate strictly in a professional sense. She is a trainer over all the teams in our company, and he manages one of those teams. She also told me that they had been communicating much less. I trusted her and took her word for it. I just chalked it up to my being paranoid and maybe still a bit jealous. I continued to try to improve and be better for her. I started going to therapy and made intentional time to devote to her. Things were feeling so much better than they ever had. The only issue was that every time she was in the area with teams near his team, she would abruptly stop messaging me for several hours. She always had a reason after the fact, and those reasons were valid. We work in the same field, so I know how work can get hectic. I would gaslight myself into ignoring the instincts I had. It wasn't like she was up in that area much. Less than once a week, maybe twice a week. The rest of the time, she was totally her normal self. Eventually, all my suspicions subsided. Until last week, on Monday, she went up to that area to prepare for corporate visits. She ended up taking my car since I needed to replace the tires on hers that day. Everything was going well, we were texting and joking. Totally normal. Around 4 p.m., she stopped, and I didn't hear back from her until 7:30 p.m. She texted me a little bit and then called me and complained about how she got stuck helping out, and the team she was with didn't even seem to appreciate her help. I let my anger and suspicion go and once again convinced myself that I was overreacting. On Wednesday last week, we went up to that same area together to attend a meeting with corporate. When we got to the office up there, I noticed that there were pictures of the leadership team along with all of the managers. Her picture was next to his on the wall, and I felt so much rage and hurt bubble up inside me. On our drive back, I addressed it with her, and she comforted me and helped me feel more at ease. She assured me that I was the one she wanted to be with forever and apologized so many times for making the mistake of developing feelings for someone else, and she felt guilty and disgusted over it. Thursday night, we were on the couch together, watching TV, and just spending time together. We were messing around on our phones, making different contact cards, but I couldn't get the one I made to pop up on her phone. During this, he sent her a text, and she tried to hide it, then very shortly afterward got up and told me she needed to go to the bathroom. That was the confirmation I was dreading. If they had been strictly professional, then she wouldn't have cared if I saw that message and definitely wouldn't have left the room to respond. When she returned, I confronted her about it and asked why he was texting her so late and why she was suspicious about it. She admitted to me that she had lied and that her relationship with him had continued mostly via text. He had been flirty, and she had reciprocated. She assured me that she didn't actually want a relationship with him, it just made her feel good. She was way out of his league, and he would never be able to do any better than her. She said that also made her feel awful because he was way more invested in things than she was. I was so hurt and betrayed. I felt a rage inside me that I hadn't felt in so long. I wanted to put him on a breathing machine. After I calmed down, I asked very directly if there was anything else she was hiding. I needed to know how to process it all. She admitted that when she went out the night of my emotional breakdown, he had met up with the group and they had sex in his car later. That was the reason she had been out so late. That confession truly broke something inside me. I've never hurt more in my life. I asked for more details and she gave them to me. It felt like she was finally being honest and getting all of it out in the open. I asked her to end it in front of me and she did. She sent him a long message about how it was disgusting to do things behind my back, that I was the one she wanted to be with, and for him to not message her again. I told her that I forgave her and that I loved her even when she made mistakes. I just asked that she please be honest with me and that there wasn't anything that I wouldn't try to understand and move past with her because she was my soul mate and I love her. The next couple days, I heard a lot and struggled to process everything. I just want answers and closure. I felt immense guilt because I still feel that my inability to provide emotional support is the reason for the whole situation. Had I been a better husband, then she wouldn't have felt the need to do any of this. So Saturday night, I fell asleep for an hour, woke back up and couldn't sleep. My mind is racing with a million questions, suspicions, and what-ifs. My ex had gaslit and lied to me every time I caught her and forgave her why my wife would be different. I was in a terrible headspace. So I decided to do the crazy thing and log into our cell phone account online and look to see how many texts she had sent and received from him. Within the last 2 months it had been thousands. Nearly triple what she had sent or received from me. There had not been any since the night I asked her to end it, though. which gave me the smallest sense of relief. I started spiraling at 2 a.m. I just had to know the truth. How deep was this relationship? What did they actually talk about? I did the second crazy thing that night and opened her phone and found the texts between them. It was so much worse than I had thought. They were saying I love you, she had complained about me, and they made plans to meet up. Even swapping nude photos, she hadn't sent me a nude since 2020. All the things I had hoped weren't happening. My heart sank. My wife woke up and caught me going through her phone. She confessed more about the relationship and still maintained that she was not as invested as he was. I asked when the last time they saw each other was, and she said that past Monday, when she stopped messaging me, she went to his house. I asked if anything physical had happened, and she said it hadn't and that his kids were home when she visited. We were up until 6:30 a.m. hashing it out. I finally came to some resolution, even though I was still very hurt. Finally, Sunday afternoon, I felt myself filling with emotional trauma from my whole life. I didn't want to break down in front of my kids, so I quickly went and sat inside my closet and sobbed. My wife eventually came and found me there. She comforted me in the sincere way that she always used to. I asked her how many times she had sex with him, since she made it sound like it was just once. She confessed that it had been 4 times. I asked when the most recent time had been, and she said the past Monday. She had lied to me once again. She drove my car up to his house and had sex with him while I fixed her car and gaslit myself into thinking her ghosting me was all in my head. How can I stop feeling responsible for her infidelity? I made so many mistakes, but I know she is ultimately the one to blame. I've never even considered another woman, even in our worst times. I don't want to leave her, I still love her with all my heart. I want to trust her again, but how do I do that? Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe for more stories like this. See you next time.